And we're live.
We are live. Tuesday evening, Trampled Underfoot time.
That's right. Well,
So, what's up in the wonderful world of Miami?
oh well, it's a hot mess as always.
Really? That bad, huh?
Well, I'm sure that people have had similar experiences in what I'm about to share, but I have a package coming to me
Okay.
to be delivered, but it's got to be signed off. And so it was in transit to be here from 8 to 8, as they do
Uh-huh.
from a certain company. And but we won't tell you what the actual name is, but it's X Fed in reverse.
I was going to ask if it rhymed with FedEx.
And the thing is about this situation is that it was supposed to get here, and so I left the door open and the whole 9 yards, and I go outside around 2. I'm gonna sneeze. I didn't have
Bless
time to
you.
press the button. It was one of those things.
Well, it's your Reddit, so that's fine.
I saw the stamp, like the paper sticky on the mailbox. I was in here. They said, "Sorry, we missed you." Blah blah blah. It's gonna be at the location in far off Egypt, but you know what? This and that. And I'm like, well, what the heck, man? I'm right here. The guy didn't even step off the, say, hey, nothing. And so I called and stuff, and they said, well, it'll ship out tomorrow and this and that. I said, listen, and I talked to the guy. I know that you're doing your job and this and that, but this is an important package. I have to sign off on it. I was here. There was no call. There was no nothing. And I want to be assured in the event that it's not here and it ends up in a location, I don't want it to be in that far location. I want it to be. And he said, well, sir, this, and that. We're going to try this and that. Boom. Hangs up. Then later I get a call from them and they say, we're going to try to deliver it again. And hopefully you're there this time. I said, I've always been there. And in fact, and he says, and we're going to try to deliver it tonight by 8:00. And I said, sir, if not, I'd like it to be at the closer location, at that far away location. And the guy says, you're not even going to have to worry about that. When it's written out in our, through that, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. There's no other way. I said, are you sure? Well, yeah. I said, yeah, but just in case, I'd like to, whatever. So I left the door open, waited. 8:00 came and went, nothing. And then I called, and a lady says, oh, there's no notes about that. And so now, I said, lady, it's like, how can I confirm or deny anything if it's not in writing? Like the driver can say that he came and that he didn't, that he came and he never did. And even if he didn't leave a postie stick, he could say he did. And I wouldn't have the proof of it because basically we're at their every whim is the truth of the matter. So if they're not honest, they've been lying the whole time. It was a series of lies just to get the next guy off their back.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the drivers are circling Miami that's crowded and congested. And they're like, well, I don't want to stop here. Screw that. I mean, that's what I'm picturing because it's happened before. And I know mix-ups happen, but no. So now tomorrow, because it didn't come, I'm going to have to deal with that. I'm still upset about it. Have you had interactions with companies that were crappy?
Oh, too many to count. I've been pretty lucky when it comes to deliveries, though. If I've had things a little late, I've had things a little early, I've had things come damaged, but I've never been blown off like that. I've never had somebody say, well, we tried to deliver it, there's if anything, I have met them outside of the driveway, just depends on what it is. Some things, if it's a lot of stuff coming or if it's something big, I go out and at least offer to, help. Oh no, this is big. It's got to go in over here. Okay, fine. Take it over to the shed or something. But I've not been blown off. If it's been, they have tried to deliver it to me and it's been legit. We weren't home, So I guess I've been lucky. But I mean, short of sitting outside on the front porch all day, I don't know how much further the guy wants you to go.
I mean, that's the thing. And then the whole thing is, apart from that, is that you can tell them, hey, look, I've been here. And they could say, well, no, you haven't, because we tried. And that was repeated. And I said, just because you write that you tried doesn't mean that you tried. So if that company wanted to, and if they did that too much, they'd lose business. But here in Miami, they have not so great a reputation. They fumble a lot, and I prefer UPS way better than FedEx.
I've had absolutely the best luck with the post office. I mean, the postal service takes a lot of ribbing. I know they get a lot of teasing, but I had one package. Now this is about 5 years back, maybe coming up on 6 years back now. I was waiting on a package and the tracking got to a certain place and it just stayed there for 3 days. Finally, on day 4, I called the customer service number and I said, tracking number here shows it's been sitting in this place for 4 days and I'm supposed to have it tomorrow. What's going on? And let us check it out and everything. And the guy took my phone number and he called me back a half hour later and says, you're absolutely right. It got overlooked. It was sitting on the wrong shelf. It's back in the flow right now. And sure enough, that afternoon, it was at my, not my local post office that delivers to me, but the big hub here in Medford, then went to my post office the next morning and then came to me. So it was on time, but it sat for like 3-4 days down in California somewhere. And I'm like, what's going on with this? But they actually got up and looked for it. And that's what impressed me.
If you have a series of interactions with a company disconnected from a face-to-face situation, and we've had similar conversations in other on other topics, the ability to pass the ball off is very easy. So say, oh yeah, whatever, and they don't do anything, and then you have to call back, and then the next guy, yeah, and they don't do anything, and it's like everybody's there, but not doing their job. Yeah. And then this sort of thing happens. And I even got a call and was told on the call that it's arriving today, not to worry, and this and that.
Yeah, that's completely different. I've never had that kind of a situation happen. Now, but I have been on both sides of that customer service fence. And my wife, Linda, was a customer assistance agent with a big internet provider, let's just say, a big communications company. And she was there her job was troubleshooting DSL internet connections. Yeah. High-speed internet connections.
That's
and working in a call center, so I've heard the stories, believe me, by the time they get to you, they're already cheesed off because their internet doesn't work. And they've gone through this big menu. And that's one secret about these menus. When you go through the menu and you enter your information and everything, all that's doing is routing your call to the right department. Then you get the agent on the phone and they're going to ask you a lot of the same questions. Well, computer systems change and this, that, and the other. And now sometimes that information does follow the call, but it didn't used to. Right. So, people would get mad about that. I just put that information in the menu. I said, yes, and that got you to me. Now I need the information so I can help you. So I've heard stories, of irate customers and what have you. But then again, that doesn't mean that the agents are always right. A lot of times their hands are tied by software. The software won't let you go any further. You have to ask that dumb question. But to just, call you back several times and then not put notes in the description, that to me is just bizarre.
Here's another issue, with what you're saying as well, to add insult to injury. There's also the script that they read, that they have to read.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I understand. There's clear word verbiage that must be, but when the employee is reading it like, and because and you're listening to it and the cadence, they're just
Yeah.
you're not, and they're mumbling words together and stuff, and that's what happened today. And she's reading her script and I'm listening to them like, and it's mumbled, and I'm not gaining any. It's like this, ma'am. I had a problem with this and that, and then the lady says, blah 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 blah, and I'm like listening to that, and it's like it has nothing to do. And if it did, I don't understand because she's mumbling it all together.
Yeah.
And she has a slightly foreign accent, let's say, and you're like, well, what is that useful? Bad call by these companies to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was an offshore call center, just based on what you just said right there, because that the number one complaint there that has gone into about call centers is we can't understand what they're saying. And it sounds like they're reading a script. They are reading a script. And because when you told her what the problem was, she's ticking boxes and typing in what you're telling her. And then the software decides where we go from there. And she has to read this script out before she can close that window and start doing anything else. Right. There's a lot of us behind the scenes that goes on. Now, that does not forgive her for, number one, sounding like she's reading a script. Number two, reading it poorly. Number three, jumbling the words together so that you couldn't understand them.
Right, because the purpose of the script from the higher ups, I would assume, that have studied this and said, this is the perfect plan. That is not to me, the whole system is set up so that it creates a buffer between the customer and, I don't want to, how did I say, they keep collecting their money. You have this huge buffer. People try to get things resolved, and you have to go through all these hoops, and many fall, off the ways. And they keep trucking, but they suck. They suck.
Let me tell you something that a lot of people don't know is that you can ask for an onshore agent if you can't understand the person. Just the minute they take a breath or break, just say, wait a minute, could you please connect me with an onshore agent? I'm in the U.S. Oh, great. I got a horn honking behind me. Can you hear that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Here's hoping that doesn't take very long for him to come out and shut that puppy off. This is hilarious. There's nothing I can do. It's somebody's alarm going off in their car. Somebody hit the panic button.
You never hear this on Joe Rogan.
Oh, well, Joe Rogan don't live anywhere where there's cars. Okay, they got it. That or it reset itself. That's funny.
So it's like, very annoying, and I don't know. It's a very simple thing. Okay, so at the end of the day, the whole process is very simple. Like, its basic fundamental is there is an item here in this location, and it needs to arrive at this other location. And then you have a series of humans ready to mess it up. And they sure do in some occasions. In Miami, I think that the idea, there's also the climate of the city and the drivers that they hire. It's just, there's a lot to be said, which we've touched on in other, but it's not good. I'll just leave. And to add insult to injury to that is that, I had Javi calling me on the phone because Jason Roush is in town. And at the middle of the day, while I'm in the middle of phone calls and the whole thing, trying to get this solved, and that for us to meet up, to have dinner and this and that. I said, look, man, I'm in the middle of this and I got to get it because I need that package. And then later I realized, oh, wait a second, we also have the show this evening. So that was my out. I said, look, apart from everything, I got, the show tonight and stuff. But bad mood because it was just an insulting set of circumstances, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, there's a lot of things going on all at once, and so it's just you would think that getting a package from point A to point B would be an easy ordeal, but when you've got millions of packages moving, it gets quite complicated. So, but that doesn't excuse people not doing their job.
So I told one of them that I said, look, if there's an error, just be straight up. Tell me the truth of the matter. It's not going to get here for a week. Say the truth so that way one can schedule themselves to accommodate that situation at the very least. But what do? They set the package in the farthest away location. Oh, if you want to pick it up over there.
Yeah, you can come to New Orleans and get it. And it's like, dude, no.
And it's so like I've had bad experiences with that company. It's also hard to get into Sweetwater traffic wise, but hey, that's not, that's the service they're providing.
Yeah, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it, Super Chicken. I'm real sorry to hear that you have a tough job, but come on.
Amazon gets here just fine. FedEx, UPS gets here just the
dude, your mailman does it 5 days a week. What's this guy's excuse?
They're
he's not driving a Peterbilt.
I'll tell you something within the concept of this that we're talking about in customer service and this and that. I used to work for a company that would hire me out, and I would pick the different jobs, but it was a merchandising type deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the jobs included, for instance, I'd work on, I was a repair technician, first tier. So I did the basic repairs when a machine got stuck or whatever. And so I go around town and do all the super malls, the malls. Mm-hmm. And so I mixed supermarket with malls. Mm-hmm. And we also did, I don't know, just like DVD movies and stuff from those red box machines and all that. But I used to do Blockbuster when that was still, around. Okay. And you'd go and refill them and this and that. And well, I also got a gig one time through the company for pool products, pool maintenance products. Just so happens that these pool maintenance products, because what happens is that you'll have like a company that they do all this work, they have this product, let's say the pool company, mm-hmm. and they'll go to this company, this merchandising company, and they'll say, we need X amount of people to service this area, and this is the criteria, and this is the job that we need them to do. And so they hire out, subcontract out. And so that's what I would do. And I did many different things. Well, so I got this thing with the pool company, and all their products were in supermarkets, in public supermarkets. And so I didn't want to take it at first. And she said, look, it's good money. It pays even more and this and that. And it's in all the Publix across South Florida. So mm-hmm. I had to go get in my car with my itinerary and like each Publix across South Florida and go to the floor manager for that section, uh-huh. and count the amount of products and then say, look, you're missing this and that. We want to order this much. They'd sign off on it, and then we were good and then deliver. So that's all I had to really do. Doesn't mm-hmm. sound like difficult, right?
Right.
And it wasn't, However, the difficult part is not in the actual job, which is a breeze. It's dealing with people at certain levels of society. And in supermarkets, it's a racket. I never knew. But there's all sorts of situations that go on there. But anyways, the point of the thing is that there was one in Homestead, and I went down to Homestead driving. And I'd make my run. The day would be long. But you go from store to store and stuff, and you mm-hmm. count and this and that, and you do your thing. But I ended up in the one down in Homestead, and I couldn't. So the lady, I said, okay, so you don't have enough, outage of product that I can reorder the little amounts that she wanted. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, I can't do that. She said, well, you got to talk to the store manager. and the store manager came huffing and puffing down the aisle and stuff. And I said, hello, ma'am. And she says, don't call me ma'am. I'm like, whoa. And I was like, and she had a attitude with me. She says, now, why can't you sell me the amount? I said, because the company there's a minimum, and you haven't met that minimum. There's the
Here we go again. Am I gonna have to go over and unplug this guy's horn or what? I'll do it. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so long story short, there's a minimum, and I told her there's a minimum, and she said, let me have your boss's number and your name. And I'm like, ma'am, not a problem, but it's not up to me. These are the rules that I follow. And she called the boss in front of me, and it was a big, and then they called me, the higher ups from my company, and they had a sit down with me, a phone sit down with me, let's say, and it was a big deal. And I'm thinking to myself, I did nothing except my job, and everybody's trying to figure out and stuff and this and that. And I'm like, this one lady in her position had a hair in the wrong place and created this whole mess. That's the power of one person's ability to mess up a whole series of situations for people all around them. Right. And I had nothing to do with it other than I was doing my job, and they all pointed fingers towards me. I'm not going to sell, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. I can't do it. So, and the ma'am thing is like, so ma'am, hello, ma'am, and no, ma'am was bad. And I was like, what the hell? I said, oh, crap. Ma'am is bad. Yeah. And so weird things like that. I eventually I kept doing it, and I said, look, I'm going to do this round, but I'm done. Yeah. I'm not going to do this because you can't win, and I'm not going to be upset for,
Well, not only that, but you were doing your job, as you say. Now, I have left jobs for that. I have left jobs specifically over that, and I've let management know that I was leaving because of that. Because it's like, look, I am following the rules you laid down for me. I'm following the rules you set down for me. And now you are coming to me because I'm following those rules. I can't work for somebody who doesn't have my back when I'm doing my job. Keep your job. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I have left positions over that. If you don't have my back when I'm trying to have your back and I'm following the rules you established, then I don't want to work for you. Forget it. I was looking for a job when I found this one. Goodbye.
Yeah, because you're put in a situation where,
well, you can't do it right. Yeah, you can't do it right. You cannot do it right, and I won't work under those circumstances. No, goodbye.
I learned the first lesson of that. I learned was when my first job was working. I was 15 years old, and I was working at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And I've told the story roughly about that, but with the managers, even back then, I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I inconsistencies in process mm-hmm. is significantly, annoying. So fries, you put the fries in mm-hmm. to the container, and they have a thing where you're supposed to like let them drop into the thing in a certain way with that, so that it looks full, but it's really not full, because you can really cram fries into that thing. You can give somebody a great old fry,
2 pounds of fries.
Yeah. And one guy in a car at the drive-thru, I did that, and he says, "Hey, come here." And I came up to the window, and he grabbed the fry thing. What do you call it? Like the little basket or whatever
cup thing. Yeah,
the cup thing, and he bumped it on the side of the window, and all the fries fell in like to a vast catacomb of nothingness. Uh-huh. So it looked like there was a minimal amount of fries. And he said, "Fill it up." I was 15 years old, and this is like an older guy says, "Fill it up." And I'm like, "Oh, shit. Oh, oops. I didn't mean to say that." So then I walked over and I filled it to the max, right? And so, but they have that thing where you're supposed to fill it. Well, the manager, one day this guy comes in, and the manager's there, and this guy comes in and he orders from me. And I remember this to this day because it's so insane. The guy comes in and he says, "Yeah, I'd like some fries. Will that be all, sir?" "Yes." And I say, "Okay." And he says, "But leave them there for I don't know how long extra until they become red and crunchy." And I'm like,
Okay.
"Oh, I'm sorry, sir. It has a timer, and we do it. When it starts beeping, and that's when they're done." And he says, "No, no, no, no. Go ahead and do that." And I'm like, "Well, and then so the lady manager comes up. She says, "What's the problem?" I said, "No, because he wants the fries extra crunchy." And she looked at him and she ignored me at that very moment. She says, "Oh, how you doing? Yeah, you want?" And she says, "Yeah, make the fries like that for him." And like, because she knew the guy or something
Yeah.
like that. So the inconsistency, it's like, well, screw this.
Well, you can do something special for somebody special every once in a while and what have you, but I don't know. I mean, I'm more forgiving over things like that
Oh no, I
than I
wasn't.
am with people trying to take advantage of the system. I've
Yeah.
had some dynamite bosses. I've had some really excellent bosses, and I'm a non-confrontational guy. At least I think I am. But sometimes you have to get assertive, especially in casinos, as you know.
Yeah.
But I've had some real good bosses, and I've had some really rotten bosses. I've had some bosses that I wished I could run away from faster. It's just like in the military. I had some excellent commanders, and I had some really dipstick commanders. Who a couple of them, it was like, do you forget to breathe? I mean, does it ever? Just, oh, I'm supposed to inhale now. Do you ever have to consciously think of things like that? But
Yeah.
wow. But yeah,
I mean, it's the power trip scenario also.
Sure.
But it's like ridiculous. What kind of power trip, And again, the fry thing is just an example of inconsistency. Not that I was
Yeah.
like overwhelmed, with angry. It's just that I was like, well, we were taught one thing, and now if we made an exception for everybody, it would be a hot mess. But so rules can change depending on who's in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in food service, that is the case. I mean, speaking of casinos, food and beverage is where I had most of my arguments because the bartenders, it was driven into the bartenders, use the shot glass, use the shot glass, use the shot glass. There were a couple of customers that the owner said, go ahead and free pour. Don't use the shot glass. And that caused more problems than I can count, simply because they see a bartender free pouring for the guy down the bar, but you're using a shot glass from me. Well, what makes him special? You can't come right out and say he spends about $5,000 a week in here. You can't just say that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the boss's rules. That's about all you can say. Well, my money isn't as good as his, or his money is better than mine. No, it's the amount, but you can't say that.
Right.
I mean, this guy orders a drink once a month, and you're in here every night. You're being served one way, he's being served another. No, It's not fair. But take it up with the owner.
Yeah.
So,
but people won't understand that, and the guy doing the bartending is the one getting the slack for it.
And they're the ones in the middle. The bartenders don't care. It's just like, that's the rules. That's what I got to say. But they don't want to hear that from the bartender. So the bartender comes over and gets the shift supervisor, and that's me.
Well, obviously the people here with the FedEx thing did not care all the way down the line, because it was like brushing off back to back.
Sure. And to be fair, they don't know where your package is either, more than likely. The only guy who knows exactly where the package is the guy with it in the back of his truck. And they can say all they want to on the phone. That's not going to make the guy in the truck drive any faster. So, they're going to do what they got to do. But I do agree with you about that. How much more here do you want than me sitting in my living room waiting for you to knock on the door?
Right. If you want me sitting on the sidewalk on a little stool with my dog and stuff with a fan.
No, don't have the dog. They won't approach you if you got a dog. They don't want to get bit.
Well, you see, there you go. I mean, it's like, it's so it's a ridiculous thing.
It is.
So I think that we've covered that.
Oh yeah. I could go on forever about customer service stories on both sides of that fence, but that's for another show.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, so I have a topic that is kind of a weird thing, but I'll throw it at you. And I was thinking about this actually a few days ago, and I said, "Oh, this will make a good topic to see what Mark says." And I don't know if we've touched on this in particular, but you'll correct me if we have.
Yeah,
So,
we'll find out. Maybe it's worth a rehash. Maybe things have changed.
So very weird, horrifically inappropriate behavior of the royals.
I don't think we've I don't know, we've gone back in history a little bit. But like, do you have anybody in particular in mind?
So these are habits of monarchs and royalty of Europe.
Okay.
And so I'll throw I've got a few of them and see what you think. Some of them might be known and others might not. Like the first one, I think that we're all going to know about, or roughly thereabouts. But Henry VIII had a groom of the stool.
I have heard of that.
And it says here, among his many reforms, Henry VIII introduced an all-important job to the English monarchy, the groom of the stool. And so one lucky boy, chosen from the sons of his most trusted nobles, got the job of following the king around with a portable toilet.
Mm-hmm.
The groom of the stool needed to be there and vigilant, and he was expected to watch the king as he ate and would make notes when he consumed what he consumed and prepared for the job to come. And when the moment came, the groom would help the king undress and then clean up his mess. And this was actually a respected job.
Yes. Yes, I have heard of that. It was a job that people literally fought to get for two reasons. One, the king knew it was a nasty, disgusting job, and the groom was paid very, very handsomely for it. The other was simply the amount of time the groom got to spend with the king by himself. There were people who were extremely jealous of that time, because not just anybody could walk up to the king and say whatever they had on their mind.
Yeah.
But just the ability to be alone with the king, because the king would make small talk. He would talk to the groom. I mean, you can't have that personal of a relationship with a servant and not speak. And it was a very prestigious job to have. As foul as you and I might think it would be, that people literally fought over that job, fought to get that job.
I got to get to that stool, come hell or high water.
Exactly.
You know,
because I mean, a person could be given, I mean, the king had the power to grant anything to this person. And so many years of faithful service, this person could be granted an entire estate and given a title. So, yeah. It was something that people wanted to do. As disgusting as you and I think it is, it was a highly sought after position, as it were.
Well, let's go into something that's even more exciting. These are royal things that are dirty royal habits, weird habits. So Christian VII pleasured himself so often that it became a national crisis. Denmark's 18th century King Christian knew no love greater than his own hand. He spent so much time at it that the Danish government organized meetings to figure out what to do about it. The doctor who looked after him, or the doctors, they were convinced that chronic masturbation was the cause of all his problems. And that he was mentally ill.
You think?
And so check this out. his chief physician wrote a whole book about Christians masturbating insanity. And when he couldn't get the king to put his pants back on and focus on ruling a kingdom, the doctor ended up taking over, and he did most of Christian's decision making for him, which freed up some time for the king to follow his passion. And
I know everybody needs a hobby, but come on, what do you say to that? I had not heard of that one.
See that one?
There are so many jokes that could be made, but I'm going to let them all slide because I'm better than that. Okay, no, I'm not, but still.
I mean, imagine he couldn't rule the nation. He didn't have time to rule the nation. He's busy.
Well, you think that's insanity? Come on. I mean, what more does a guy have to do? Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Well, I mean, and the sad thing is that a whole book was written about it, dude.
Like, he's a king, for crying out loud. It's not like there weren't women around.
I mean, but that was his.
I know. I get it. I understand. I don't understand. I'm not going to pretend I understand. Never mind. Next.
All right. So here's a Spanish queen. Joanne of Castile traveled with her husband's dead body. The mother of Emperor Charles V of Spain spent the better years of her married life, to a man known as Philip the Handsome. And apparently she thought Philip deserved his nickname because she refused anyone to bury him when he died. And in fact, she kept her husband's dead body in her room for over 12 months while Philip's body slowly decayed. And she went on acting as if he was alive. And when anybody would come and, ask, she would simply insist that he was asleep and would wake up soon. So she would sleep with the body at night, and she would make the servants treat it with the respect due to a king. And in a fit of jealousy, she wouldn't let any woman enter the room with the dead body, apparently worried that they'd be overwhelmed with lust. So how about them apples?
I won't say it wasn't uncommon, but I have heard of other things similar to that, like Sir Walter Raleigh's wife. When Sir Walter Raleigh was executed, his body was buried, but his wife, Elizabeth, had his head embalmed, and she kept it and carried it with her for the last 29 years of her life. Her husband's severed head in a red leather bag. She kept it and carried it around with her. So there was almost a trade in body parts back then, or bodies. I mean, that kind of thing, I won't say it was common, but it wasn't unheard of. And that's just, I don't know. Death was a lot more prevalent back then. It was a lot more visible and out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would probably venture to say my parents, maybe my grandparents, in their lifetime, death wasn't as common as it was back in the day. It was not uncommon to see dead people. Here, it's pretty ding dong rare. Here now, in our time.
Yeah.
So there was a much more cavalier attitude about it. There was a story, and I don't remember what city it was in. It was someplace in England where near a brewery, and one of the huge vats burst, and beer basically flooded this entire street. I mean, washed into buildings and everything else. and people died. It was common in that neighborhood for like women to charge, a few cents to come in and look at her husband's dead body.
Oh, wow.
To just as like a tourist attraction. Yeah, come in and see him. See, he drowned in the flood, and in the beer flood, to raise enough money to bury their husbands. And people would gladly pay to go in and see a dead body.
Right.
But it was just, I don't know, man. Talk about the macabre. It's just, yeah. Okay. Next. But for a queen, yeah.
And also keeping it around and being jealous. She had, because she didn't accept the fact,
Yeah. Well, let's face it. She was obviously off her nut. So, and plus, with the king dead and buried, who succeeds the throne? So.
Well, this is going to get a little bit more severe.
Uh-oh. Do I want to hear it? Go ahead.
King Charles II kept a wig of his mistress's pubes.
That was not uncommon.
In 1651, King Charles II started a new project. Every time he slept with a woman, he plucked a few hairs from under her skirt. Then he stitched them all together into a wig that gradually grew into an unnerving, thick mane of female hair. And when the wig got big enough to cover a man's head, Charles II donated it to a Scottish drinking club called the Beggars' Bench Club. And they loved it so much that they wore it during their ceremonies. Now, one person even went as far as to steal it and started his own club with that wig, where he made people kiss the wig. So there you go.
Not uncommon. He was not the only one that did such things.
Okay.
That he was not the only one to do such things. You know what? Well, I can't give you any examples off the top of my head, but I have heard of that before, and not just in connection with Charles. That was Charles II, right?
Yes.
Now, I've heard of that kind of thing happening before, not just with him.
In what context?
And a collection, so to speak, of the powerful dukes and in mainland Europe, prominent, not so much royalty, but people of stature with titles. But yeah, see what we used to do before television and the movies.
What do you do when you don't have cable TV? You make a wig out of pubes.
And when you're the king, is she going to say no? Probably not.
No, yeah, exactly. If you're the king, what are you going to say? No, sire, don't. No. Well, here's one that I guess maintains the status quo of the episodic countdown here. Queen Maria Eleonora slept with her husband's heart. So she didn't love her husband, King Gustav Adolphus, for his power or his money. She loved him for his heart, and when he died, she had his heart ripped out of his body so that she could sleep with it. And Mary kept her dead husband's organ in a golden box that she placed above her bed each night. And on some nights, she even made her daughter climb into bed with her so that she could be close to her father's heart, which traumatized the daughter, and she never forgot. She wrote about it, actually.
You think?
And said that her mother was horribly abusive and never stopped crying, saying that she carried out her role of mourning to a perfect,
Yep, she was off her nut as well.
Yeah.
So, oh boy. Wow. I don't know. I'd not heard of that one either.
Insane?
Oh, yeah. Obviously. But then again, I mean, we're also looking at this with 2020 hindsight from the year 2020, and they didn't know anything better back there. They didn't know anything about where emotions came from. I mean, there were a lot of crazy ideas back there. So
I mean, I just I think it's insanity, dude.
oh
And
yeah,
yes,
definitely insanity.
I know back then, but no, but I mean, it's just I don't know. It's just insanity, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely insanity. I mean, to have your husband's heart cut out, put it in a gold box, and sleep with it. Obviously to symbolize love and this, that, and the other, but to go that far beyond that,
It's
I mean, come on.
well, I'm gonna skip one of them
Thank
because
you.
when you, when I say I'm gonna skip one, it's for a reason.
Yep.
So,
If you think you need to skip it, it needs to be skipped.
so here we go. King Adolf Fredrik ate himself to death, and he was a Swedish king, and he had a habit of eating a dessert called Selma, which is a sweet roll filled with cream. And in itself, it's not disgusting, but he ate so many that it actually killed him. They write here. And so here's the story. So in 1771, the Swedish king sat down to a meal of lobster, caviar, and every other food you can think of. And when the meal was done, he wolfed his way through 14 of those desserts in a single sitting. And when he managed to stand up, his stomach, unsurprisingly, was bothering him, and he died shortly thereafter. And he went down in history as the king who ate himself to death. So King Henry I of England had already died from eating too many lamprey eels, and so there's others, but this guy is called the king that, and by the way, lobster and all that wasn't considered like high end, but this guy liked to eat it. So he ate himself to death.
Yeah, lobster was not considered the delicacy it is now. Lobster was commoner's food. It was, what you served slaves and, animal feed and things of that nature. It wasn't something that civilized people or people of stature ate.
Yeah.
And when that changed, I'm really not sure. But I mean, up into the 1700s, even in the U.S., that it wasn't treated with the as the delicacy it is now. Now it's just bloody expensive.
Yeah.
But it was looked down on.
Yeah.
And seen as you're at the bottom of the barrel if you're forced to eat lobster.
Right. I mean, which to me, I love seafood anyhow.
Me too.
It's one of those things. Well, here's a nice disgusting one.
Oh, goody.
So, and again, we're talking about, just so that folks that tune in at this moment, about the weird, strange, and kind of gross habits of the royals throughout history. And by the way, you can catch our podcast each Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern and 6:30 Pacific Coast time. How do you say that? Pacific?
Yeah, Pacific time.
And we have a website called TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com, and you can check out our past episodes by clicking on the Wayback Machine. And we talk about a whole variety of different conversations, topics, and interesting way to pass the time. We also have a page on Facebook.
Yeah, we have a Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search for Trampled Underfoot Podcast. We record these sessions on Tuesday evenings, as Eloy said, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific on our YouTube channel. Head on over to YouTube, look for Trampled Underfoot Podcast, and subscribe to the channel and click that little notification bell. Then you'll get a notification when we go live and record scintillating after dinner conversations such as the topic we're discussing tonight.
Very good. And by the way, it kills the effect when I'm impressed and say it out loud. Very good. Left alone, because that was smooth. And we're also sponsored by Harneal Media. That's Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. And for all your website needs, if you want custom, you can get custom, and the pricing is really great. And it's a very, what would you call, personalized experience. So that's harnealmedia.com.
Right.
We can just do the whole show. We should always talk with that commercial thing throughout the whole, because that, I don't know why, but I don't know if we could do it, if we could manage to do a whole episode just talking like that.
Oh,
So,
hell no. Geez, Eloy, I don't know. What do you want to talk about now?
exactly. So here's a disgusting one.
Uh-oh.
King James the First
Okay.
only cleaned the tips of his fingers. Now, that's the title of this, next entry. But according to a less than flattering description of Anthony Weldon, King James the First, he wasn't the most hygienic person.
Right.
And legend has it that he never bathed. According to Weldon, James needed to.
Mm-hmm.
His tongue, Weldon wrote, was too large for his mouth, and whenever he'd drink, the liquor would dribble down the sides of the king's chin, and James wouldn't do much about it. He never washed his hands, and only rubbed his finger ends slightly on a wet end of a napkin to clean those up. And this was apparently the only type of hygiene the king ever practiced, and it may have been done out of necessity, they write. So, yeah, according to Weldon, they never, he never, what is it? Ever in the walk fiddling about his codpiece. I don't know what that saying is, but anyways, this guy, this guy just basically never bathed. They did say that in further reading that he bathed like 2 or 3 times in his whole lifetime. So it's not like he never. Some people say, but 3 times just isn't cutting it.
Yeah. He reigned in the 1500s, right? Late 15 and early 1600s.
Well, I can tell you right now.
He was well, back in those days, hygiene wasn't really something that was seen as quote unquote important. They knew nothing about bacteria. They, in fact, in some cultures, they thought that disease was caused by getting the body wet. In fact, Queen Elizabeth I was seen as a little bit persnickety about her appearance because she would bathe sometimes up to 4 times a year. And, as one of her aides said, whether she needed it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But she was seen as kind of strange for doing that. And that carried on into the 17 and 1800s. Ben Franklin was looked at as strange because he took a bath every night. And people just thought that was weird. You didn't need to take a bath every night. Why would you do that to yourself? You're going to get sick.
Yeah.
And that was in the 1700s, the late 1700s.
Right.
But most folks knew to try to get the majority of the crud off of you somehow. So, yeah. But personal hygiene was not seen as anything important. It was just seen as odd.
This guy reigned within the early 1600s.
Okay. James the First. Okay.
Yeah, he was born in 1566, died in
Okay.
1625.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
But
Benjamin Franklin was ahead of his time.
But one thing King James the First was, he was one of the first anti-smoking people because he hated the smell of tobacco and basically forbid it within the castle.
Yeah.
And evidently he wrote something. He wrote a pamphlet or something and gave it out. I mean, he didn't go so far as to ban it, I don't think.
He caused it to be that if you're going to buy and sell it, you had to pay in order to do commerce with it because he disliked it so much.
Yeah, I know he regulated it heavily, but it was such a money maker.
Yeah,
that he knew that if he did that, he would, not only lose out himself, but he would kill off a good, portion of the economy. And but he did forbid it within the castle and within anywhere around him if he was outside.
Yeah.
And he taxed it real heavily. So
I mean, so the bathing thing, and I also know that they also thought that disease came from smells.
Yes.
So
from air.
So it's a funny thing that they wouldn't bathe more often, but
yeah.
The masks, the plague masks, the plague doctors,
yeah,
they would have these cones and they'd stuff them with fragrant, potpourri and flowers and whatnot. And then they'd enter into these disease-ravaged towns where the plague was at, and they were the plague doctors, which is a fascinating. And by the way, there's a few stories out there about that, but it's a fascinating. A lot of the steampunk, sort of people that we've seen in past years, sort of like use that as a theme, and they'll create masks and stuff. I even created a plague mask, in one of my videos.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting. I just like the look. Plus, it's set in medieval times, but it's such a mysterious thing. And they actually used that cone, and they walked around with those hoods. They were actual plague doctors.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't understand anything about bacteria or viruses or anything like that. And they, just as you said, they thought that disease was spread by smell. And in fact, malaria, this basically means bad air, because all they knew was wherever there were foul smells, there was usually disease. They didn't make the connection, but they thought by removing the smell, you remove the disease. They were right, but for the wrong reason.
Right.
So
the smell is a consequence of Yeah, the issue, like the actual.
Sewage and rotten corpses, whether it be humans or animals. When by the time it got to where it's smelling, disease is already setting in. So they figured by getting rid of the source of the smell, they would get rid of the disease. Yeah. It was the right action to take, but for the wrong reasons. But it worked, so what the heck?
Yeah. Well, I think that we have. There's one more.
Okay.
And I think it's Louis. Boy, I can't read these Roman numerals. 10, 1, 5. So that would
Louis the 14th.
Okay, so Louis the 14th, his throne doubled as a toilet.
Yeah.
All of the people, in history, Louis, he must have been the smelliest, they say, because his throne was also a toilet. And if you can imagine that, and I'll just leave it at that. His throne, it's just such a duality to that.
There's a reason they wore the clothes that they wore. There's a reason that they dressed in the way they did. They had perfume all over themselves to cover the funk because they wouldn't bathe. They wore the powdered wigs because half the time their hair was so covered in lice, they would shave it off and then wear the big powdered wig. It was the style back then. Any kind of a sun exposure at all, any evidence of being exposed to the sun at all, was seen as low class. So they did everything to be as pale as possible, and to the point to where they would stay up at night, sleep during the day, and do everything to stay out of the sun, which gave to the point they were so pale you could see the veins through their almost transparent skin, which gave birth to the phrase blue blood. That's where the blue blood came from, because the veins look blue when looked at through the skin. But any kind of a tan or sun exposure at all was just looked down on. You were not.
Which was a reversal from the 80s. If you remember that guy that was pretty popular that would come up on TV, and he just like he's a white guy, with the features and whatnot, but he was like bronzed to a beautiful sheen of perfection of like sun, and it was so ridiculous. And people used to tan, and I don't know if they do it still, but it was it looks so weird, dude.
Yeah.
You can go to another extreme and totally butcher in the 80s. I don't know if you remember.
Well,
a lot of people did that.
Oh yeah, tanning beds and going to the tanning salon and work. Oh, I got to go work on my tan and this, that, and the other. And I'll admit, I did a little bit of that in the 90s when we lived in Hawaii. For instance, I got tanned so dark, I discovered the hairs on my arm were blonde. I really was. I mean, I had stripes on my feet from, for 10 years after we left Hawaii. Stripes from the flip-flops I wore. Because basically if I couldn't go in shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops, I didn't want to go. And because that was almost the uniform of the state of Hawaii. I mean, you go into any restaurant, you go into any store, and about 3/4 of the people in there are walking around in t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Now, obviously you had to dress when you went to work. You had to dress appropriately. But after that, nope.
Let me see if you know the guy I'm talking about. Can you take a guess, by the way?
Was he an actor? Was he an announcer? Was he?
So here's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and post the picture.
Okay.
On our Trampled Underfoot podcast Facebook page.
Okay.
Of the actor that I mentioned as being the famous actor from the 80s. At least I remember him from the 80s. And he was violently tanned. It was an amazing thing to witness. And every time he pop up on TV, it was like, whoa.
Okay, so he was a male actor. Was he a film actor or TV actor?
I think maybe both. I just posted the image.
Well, I'm not going to cheat and go look. I mean, okay, so what color was his hair? Give me a little hint here.
Okay, well, looking at the picture on Facebook that I posted, and it's just I got to say, just the bronze is like Caribbean, azul. If you had to call it, it's Caribbean azul. His hair was black.
Okay.
His skin was bronze.
Okay.
Probably not naturally. And he had, he's a very famous, you will know him. Absolutely. If you see him, and so will everybody else.
Okay.
Oh, we have some answers down here.
Tan, black hair, deep tan. Okay. I've got a couple, Warren Beatty, George Hamilton.
Should I say yes when you find it or?
Yeah.
Okay. So George Hamilton is.
It was George Hamilton.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But you got to see the picture. You got to see the picture.
Okay. I will take a look at it when we sign off here.
And I don't know why we're talking about it. It's so ridiculous. Oh, because of the medieval and or actually Renaissance.
Blue Bloods.
The Blue Bloods.
But hygiene was not something that was seen as important. And Louis XIV was not the only king whose throne doubled as a toilet. There were a few other, maybe not kings, but like dukes or earls or things like that who did more or less the same thing. It was just not seen as any kind of a problem. And if they did their business, somebody would come around behind through a curtain and pull out the pan and put a new one in and take that off and do whatever.
But I do want to stress one thing, because I didn't read the whole thing, but I do just want to stress one thing. So and this follows, right? He had that, dual functioning throne, which is hilarious. And he would, in front of court, be using the toilet portion of it while conducting business. Like, no problem.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah, but see, I don't know.
Are you going to tell him he can't? No.
Nobody will, but here's the thing. I don't know that what kind of mindset do you have to have where you, so anybody would be doing that in private because that's just your private thing. I mean, that's just simply,
Mhm.
well, but what kind of brain do you have to have, psychology and view of people, where you feel that your stuff don't stink and they must witness such an occurrence? It's just incredible.
You are the king. You can do what you want. You are better than everybody. And anybody who makes any kind of a judgment against you is just gone. I mean, that's all through history. That's all through history. And it didn't matter who it was. And that we're going to get off on a serious tangent here. That's one of the reasons Henry VIII split with the Catholic Church and formed his own. It was basically over a couple of women, but basically he got tired of taking orders from the Pope and said, nope, don't need you, don't want you. You can't excommunicate me because I've left your church. I'm forming the Church of England. Goodbye. Get off my lawn.
Yep.
He just refused to take orders from the Pope.
It's I mean, and you know what? In a certain way, it's good that that happened. Historically looking now, because the alternative to one form of Christianity and now multiple, so that people could. So I kind of like that idea that, the ability to have various branches and stuff, so people can choose and venture off, as opposed to one dominating, church, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, be it right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, it's history. It happened. And that kind of alludes to the mindset, though, or actually that doesn't allude to it. That's a demonstration of the mindset that I am the king and you can't tell me what to do. I don't care who you are or who you think you are. And I can do whatever I want.
Right. Well, Rome had a lot of power, the church did, over these kings. And they would say when people could marry or not marry, or if it was sanctioned. And his first wife was from Spain, and he married his brother died. Henry's brother died, and so he married her, and they bore a daughter, but he wasn't happy with that queen,
right?
Because
he wanted an heir to the throne.
He wanted a son, and so he went through women like nobody's. But here's the thing: anybody can be a gigolo. Well, let me backtrack that. It's not uncommon for gigolo activity to occur. However, not only did he do his gigolo actions, but he also cut their heads off when he was done with them. So it's like, wife number 18, nah.
Well, he only had, depending upon who you want to listen to and who you believe, he only had 6 wives. But, what was it? 2 of them were killed. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah. So the rest were just divorced and goodbye, but, and in fact, that's what led to the split right there. But I mean, that was the main reason, but there were a bunch of other smaller reasons for him to split from the Catholic Church and form the Church of England. But,
and for all his efforts, splitting to create that branch off, for all his efforts, all the successors and the one that would be king died early. And the daughter that belonged to the Spanish queen, she became Bloody Mary, which the reason they call her Bloody Mary is because she was not of the Protestant side, but of the Catholic side, and she just would not have her kingdom and her subjects be Protestant. So she fought against it, and she chopped heads left and right. And so, his intent at the end of the day, she overturned all his, decrees and this and that. So it's a hot mess. Once you're gone, everything's game.
Exactly.
But so, what was it? Groom of the Stool. I don't know what to call this episode, but I
We'll think of something. It's your edit, so you've got a week to think it up.
I'm kind of leaning towards Groom of the Stool, man.
Well, you go right on ahead.
So, I guess we're good to go. This one went fast, no?
Yeah, it went pretty quick. Want to thank everybody for hanging out with us over here on the YouTube chat. No, I haven't really been watching the chat all that close. What I'm trying to do is anticipate where Eloy is going, and I got to tell you, for about the last half hour, it's just been stunned silence. And Eloy does all the artwork for the podcast. I just can't wait to see the thumbnail he comes up with for this episode.
Oh man.
So thanks for hanging with us, y'all. It was kind of a weird topic, but you never know what we're going to bring up over here. So what can I say?
We'll catch you guys next time.
Take care. Thank you very much for hanging with us.